Warning! Tube amplifiers have lethal voltages inside them. Please do not attempt to build, test, or repair these without understanding and following all safety protocols. Hey y'all! Well, we got our Ultra Cost is No Option 300B amp done, and here it is with the PS Vane Summit tubes, the 6S and 7s, and their 300B tubes. We did a audio analyzer suite, pulls and testing and everything on it, and we're going to go over the results of that. This thing turned out really sweet, so let's get busy testing it. Okay, we got our 300B amp on the Analog Discovery 2. We're running a new old stock made in Japan 5AR4 rectifier tube, and we've got a set of the PS Vane Summit output and driver tubes in it. And so let's see what kind of performance this thing's going to give us. And this is looking really good. Let's see what it does up here at the higher end of the power range. Hoping for 8 watts. And there it is. So if we follow along here, this is both channels. You can see how even they are. Right about here at 3.5 watts, it dips over 1% distortion. And then we're making 8 watts. It's still under 1% distortion. And actually, we're up here at 9 watts at 2.5% distortion. So let's take a look at the frequency response. And this curve I pulled earlier is starting at 10 hertz. And you can see by the time it hits 20 hertz here, it's totally flat. All the way up here to 10K, it's down, what is that, 0.1 dBs. And then at 20K, we're down a half a dB. That's beautiful. I mean, for a single-ended amp with 0 negative feedback, that's some rock star performance. So let's take a look at the frequency versus THD. And, don't let this alarm you. This is down at 20 hertz. We're starting off at about 2.5% distortion, but by the time that we get to 28 hertz, right there, we're under 1%. And down at this super low frequency, this little bit of distortion is just nothing. And so from 30 hertz out to 10K is flat. And then on the upper end, we pick up a little bit of distortion, but it's still under 1.5. And this is at 4 watts and 8 ohms. And so if we look at the second order harmonic distortion, you can see that the vast majority of this distortion is all second order. And then we do third order, it's way down here. And so the distortion that we're seeing is almost exclusively second order harmonic distortion. And again, this is just some fantastic performance, especially for a 0 feedback amplifier. So let's go look at some scope things. We have our, again, the THD versus power. Let's see where we are at 4 watts. And you can see one channel is 1%, the other is just under. So we're making 4 watts at 1% distortion. Let's see what that looks like on the scope. So we look at the input voltage, that's 0.8 volts RMS. And this was at 1.1. And you can see that's a nice looking sine wave. And again, at 1.1 volts RMS, That's at 8 watts. So let's take a look at it at 0.8 volts. I'm sure this is going to look really nice. Beautiful, perfect sine wave. So let's see what the square wave looks like. Exactly what I like to see. Just a little tiny bit of overshoot, and then it just flattens right out. And then 100 hertz, we're going to see some angle to it, but that's pretty normal, but that's not much of an angle for a 100 hertz square wave. I've seen them where they almost look like triangles, and that's a really nice looking one. I haven't looked at the 10K one yet. Let's see what this guy does. It's not a bad looking 10K square wave for a zero feedback amp. I mean, I know you've seen some of the ones before where they're like, got just all kinds of dips and doodles and weird stuff in them, and that's not looking bad. Let's see if that changes with the voltage or with the power output. Probably doesn't. Nope. Lowering the power looks the same. And then let's go on up to 1.1 volts, which would be 8 watts, and see what that looks like. Looks identical. So, yeah. Square waves are looking good. Sine waves are looking great. I just couldn't be more pleased with this performance. And I feel like that getting this little bit of extra B plus voltage has really brought this tube alive. And it's making great power. And so, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I think that's kind of a good place to wrap this thing up. And I think that performance right there speaks for itself. For a single-ended, direct heated triode with zero negative feedback, that is some killer performance. And I mean, this frequency response is just, I don't know if you remember looking at those Wilsonton R300s where they almost made a dead short at 14K or 12K or something like that. And then look how smooth this rolls off. I mean, that's just, yeah. Super happy. Need to go hook this thing up and give it a listen. And this looks like a great place to wrap up this video. Well, as you can see, this thing turned out awesome. And one of the things I want to talk about real quick is years ago I tried increasing the power on my other older version of 300B that used the Hammond iron, and I tried putting a 750 ohm cathode resistor on it to make the tube pull more milliamps through it to get the wattage dissipation up closer to 90%, and it didn't like it at all. The distortion got super high. I mean, it started out at like 2% and just went up. And so I went back to the 880 ohm. Everything was happy. So I just said, well, I guess 300B tubes don't like being run that hot. The trick is you got to do it with voltage, not with current. They don't like a lot of current run through them. KTA 120s loved current. These tubes don't. And so running them at the 80 milliamps, but then putting 460 volts on the plate, so there's almost 400 volts going across the tube, really woke the tube up. We got almost 10 watts of power out of it before it starts clipping, or right at 10 watts when it starts clipping. Very usable 9 watts, which is a ton of power from a 300B. Most kind of max out about 8. And there's several 300B amps that are selling for pretty big money that only make about 6 watts. And so, yeah, I think this one stands above some of the other stuff on the market. Plus these big ISO transformers, I don't think there's anything under 20 grand that's using this iron. And so I'm really proud of how this turned out. I think it looks awesome. And then ended up using this little stubby switch here because we got this other big toggle right next to it. This is off like a guitar. And I thought it looked really nice for doing the bias meter, because you don't mess with that often anyway. And yeah, I don't know what else to say, guys. This is really a great 300B amp. Now, I am going to start building these. I've kind of hesitated. You go to my website and you'll see there's no 300B amps. I just really was never happy that the 300B amps, even the one that I've got for my personal one, I just felt something was missing. And I didn't want to put something out there. I mean, I've sold a few of them like that, and they're really nice. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're making 8 watts, which I think is great. But I knew there was a little bit left on the table in this higher voltage transformer, and I think part of the magic is this ISO choke. But, you know, that adds almost another $1,000 to the price. This iron is just over $2,000 shipped to me by the time I think the tariffs now are 15%. So by the time all that's done, it's a little over $2,000 for the iron. And then this whole chassis fab thing just looks really sweet too. So my plan is to make probably 2 versions of this. One's going to be in a black powder coated chassis. I'm going to talk to Haber about winding a similar transformer like this to try to keep the cost down, mainly because of the shipping and the tariffs. And he's not a whole lot cheaper than ISO is as far as the base price, but by the time you pay, I think that I just had 2 sets ordered of this iron, and the shipping was $450, which, because this stuff's heavy, and then a 15% tariff on top of that. So anyway, black powder coated chassis, Haber transformer and choke. I'm going to get them to do a nice low DCR choke as well, or we may end up using some kind of Hammond one. But anyway, USA choke, but with the ISO iron. And that's going to be kind of like the base model. And then I'm going to do another one with wood surround, with the full ISO iron, with the anodized plates. And I'm hoping in the future to be able to have these built to order and get my woodworking setup kind of going. I'm going to do a video about that. One of the viewers sent me this really cool thing called an Omni sled for my table saw that allows you to cut like perfect 45-degree corners, which is kind of the tricky part. I mean, it sounds easy, but getting 45 corners that match and there's no gap, and not like 44.9 or 45.2 or something, that little bit shows when you're building boxes like that. And so anyway, hopefully you can get to where I can start fabricating up this part. I've got this part in a file on the top and the bottom that I can take to the local water jet guys, or I don't know if they're water jet or laser, but anyway, they can fab this stuff up. And so we can start building them. I got a prototype. This is kind of the chassis that I'm thinking about doing, is something like this. It's got a spline in the corner, or a couple of splines, and then the back is like this. We kind of got these a little too close to the edge on this round. This needs to be moved over a little bit, and the IEC connector does as well, and like center these speaker holes more. Just kind of move all of that over, this over. And that's the deal with prototypes. It's like the first one is where you find out what you did wrong. And I'm going to be building an amp with that chassis. It's just I've got to kind of work around how I'm going to mount the top plate and the bottom plate, but it's still going to be fine. But got to work the bugs out on that. But I think that's going to be kind of my upscale 300B, and then have this other one with the black powder coated chassis as a lower price point one. But they're still not going to be cheap. I haven't really sat down and thought about like what these are going to run, but I'm pretty sure that the base model without tubes is going to, I don't know how I can do it much cheaper than $4,500, maybe $5,000 in that range. and the one with the fancy chassis and the all ISO iron and stuff is probably going to be closer to 6,500, maybe 7 grand. And it just is what it is. I've discovered that there's really no shortcutting a 300 beat amp that sounds good enough for the money that good 300 beat tubes cost. And I got a video following this up of putting budget 300 beat tubes in this amp trying to save some money, and it's just a waste of time. Anytime you shortcut something on a 300B amp, it ends up sounding no better, if not worse, than my little EL34 amp. And if you're not going to go all in on a 300B amp, then you just need to stick with either that EL34, or for some reason a 283 amp is much more forgiving. And those sound good with even the little Haber output transformers. When I put those output transformers on a 300B, they just sound flat and dull and just don't have any life to them, and it's not something I would want in my system. And I want to sell stuff that warrants my time in building them and your time in, or your value in buying them. And like I said, I've built some 300B amps, and the ones that I've built in the past sound nice, but they don't sound like this. And this little extra that comes from this higher voltage and stuff, there's something to that. And I'm not sure, I may get my original one and try to put a little higher voltage transformer on it and see if that is what I'm hearing. It may be part of the magic of not having as much capacitance in the amp either. These have a little lower capacitance than I did on those early versions, and I think there might be something to that with a single-ended amp, with a push-pull amp it's different. With a single-ended amp, the current draw remains constant, but there's still something to the power supply that you can hear in the output. And I think I've really kind of stumbled across something magic here. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed this build series. Thanks to all you folks that subscribe to the channel, the folks that are Patreon and all that stuff. Appreciate everyone that helps support the channel. Until the next video, have a nice day.